Let me tell you, I never thought my first real day off in months would end with a stranger calling me a dirty black piece of trash in broad daylight standing right there in front of my house, groceries still in my Tesla's trunk, the summer heat bouncing off my driveway, and my dignity scattered right alongside those golden bags of chips. Yeah, you heard that right. He grabbed my last bag out of my hands like he owned the street, smirking chest-out polo shirt, neat arrogance radiating off him like cologne. If you'd been there, you'd have seen it too. The kind of small-town bully who thinks his family name is enough to keep the whole neighborhood in line. But Bryce Thornfield had no clue who he was dealing with, or that his little racial tirade was getting captured by my body cam and his own doorbell camera for good measure. He sure as hell didn't know the new guy he was harassing was the incoming police chief, or that within 48 hours, the FBI would be combing through his family's entire life like a crime scene. The universe has a twisted sense of humor, doesn't it? Let me back up a second. Just 2 weeks earlier, I'd been sitting in my old apartment combing through property records for Millbrook Heights while my daughter Zoe ran cybersecurity drills in the next room. The red flags were everywhere. This wasn't just another fancy suburb, it was a former sundown town. Black families not welcome after dark. Now here I was about to step in as the county's chief law enforcement officer, and if that isn't cosmic justice, I don't know what is. Moving day started with neighbors peeking out behind curtains. Cell phones up every angle covered like I'd just triggered a silent alarm. Sweat was running down my back, boxes stacked up, sun beating down. And suddenly this kid Bryce lumbers out from across the street, phone pointed at me like a gun going live for his audience. "Hey, delivery boy, you're supposed to use the service entrance," he yells, voice just oozing entitlement. I played it cool, told him this was my food and my house didn't raise my voice, just made sure the doorbell cam caught every word. Right on cue, his mom. Karen stormed out, hair perfectly styled tennis outfit, HOA president from Central Casting. "Oh, I'm so sorry about my son. He's just so eager to help." She beamed at me that kind of Stepford smile that doesn't reach the eyes. But her gaze kept drifting to my car, my groceries, the fact that I didn't fit her template. Bryce Still Live was arguing, "Mom, he's delivering food, I was just helping." If you could have seen Karen's face the moment she realized her son's hate speech was not just on camera but live to the world. Priceless. That's when I held up my house key. "Cool as you please," told Bryce he'd better get used to seeing me. The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut through the humidity, just the whir of AC units, and Bryce's phone pinging with comments from his viewers who, let's be honest, were eating this up. Then under his breath he muttered to Karen, "We won't let it stay here long, Mom." And that's when I knew the gloves were coming off. Inside, the threats started fast. Text from an unknown number. "We know who you are. 72 hours to leave or things get ugly." Pictures of Zoe at her new school. Even Sarah's grave. That's my late wife. They had crossed a line and I wasn't about to back down. I shot those screenshots to my FBI contact and started collecting my own evidence. 3 days after that, I found an official letter from the Millbrook Heights HOA in my mailbox. 2 pages of nonsense. My grass was a half-inch too high, my Tesla was crooked, and apparently Miles Davis on the stereo was a community disturbance now. If you know me, you know I laughed. Sarah would have too. But it wasn't funny. Karen had used this same playbook to force out other black and brown families for years. The Williamses, the Johnsons, the Martinezes, she'd nitpicked them right out of their homes, leaving them bleeding money and spirit until they gave up. That night, Zoe burst in, eyes wild, laptop open. "Dad, you have to see this. Bryce is bragging on TikTok, calling us names, talking about keeping the neighborhood pure." She and her cybersecurity club advisor, Mrs. Patterson, had been digging tracing Bryce's posts. Turns out he'd been building a digital following for months, live streaming his community patrols and low-key hate. I could see it plain as day these posts weren't just ignorance, they were creating a case file for the feds. Here's the twist. I wasn't just the local chief, I'd been consulting for the FBI on exactly this kind of coordinated HOA discrimination network. Millbrook Heights wasn't the only place. Karen was a regional player connecting hate groups and laundering money, all under the flag of property values. And wouldn't you know it, my neighbor, Mr. Henderson, Korean War vet, had been recording HOA strategy sessions for years, passing me tapes of Karen and her crew plotting who to run out next. Then came the bombshell, an email from inside the HOA leaking financials. Security bills were really for private investigators, Landscaping was code for surveillance gear, and legal fees were going straight to lawyers who specialized in loopholes to harass the wrong kind of neighbor. Zoe, sharp as ever, traced how Bryce had even hacked into neighborhood security cameras, deleting footage of his own daytime break-ins, planting evidence to justify fines. But the real storm broke when Detective Rodriguez, my right hand, called late one night. "Chief, this isn't just one town. We've intercepted messages Karen's running a network in 8 states. You ever get that cold feeling in your stomach when you realize the enemy is way bigger than you thought?" The harassment went into overdrive. Bryce and his friends spray-painted my garage live on Instagram while I recorded the whole thing from inside. They weren't just dumb, they were making my federal case for me. Drugs fell out of Bryce's jacket, all on camera. Mrs. Chen, a Taiwanese immigrant 2 houses down, showed up with her own folder of selective citations, all linked to her family's cultural celebrations, while the white neighbors' parties went untouched. And when a deepfake video of me threatening an old lady surfaced, Zoe and Mrs. Patterson broke down the digital fingerprints straight to Bryce's laptop. By Thursday, my police cruiser was keyed and tagged security footage showing Karen herself nearby. The next day, the city council was hit with a petition, fake signatures, doctored photos, calling for my firing. I got suspended, badge gone, cameras rolling as Karen smiled for the evening news, thinking she'd won. What she didn't know, suspension freed me to act, no more red tape. The FBI was ready. We prepped simultaneous raids in 8 states, every shred of evidence Karen and Bryce handed us ready for court. And the final act, Friday morning, Karen herself showed up at my door, clipboard in hand, fake smile tight as ever. I flashed my badge, watched the color drain from her face, and told her it was time we talked about her community standards and about federal law. That was it. Social media flipped overnight. Bryce's followers dropped him like a hot potato after hackers hijacked his streams and blasted his hate speech nationwide. Mr. Henderson posted the HOA tapes online, and the comments started flooding in, not just from black families, but from white neighbors, immigrants, anyone Karen had stepped on. The whole thing snowballed. By the end of the week, the FBI had warrants for 23 HOA boards. Karen was in cuffs, and the news anchors could barely keep up. But it didn't stop there. Turns out Karen's network had been responsible for my wife Sarah's delayed cancer treatment. Her death wasn't just a tragedy, it was a message sent by these people to silence cops who dig too deep. That revelation broke me in a way nothing else could, but it also lit a fire. The raids uncovered not just harassment, but plans for full-on violence of Phase 2 that would have made national headlines if we hadn't stopped them cold. The day the FBI took down the Thornfield house, the whole neighborhood watched. Karen in handcuffs, Bryce melting down live on Instagram, screaming about heritage and property values as agents carted out boxes of evidence, every transaction, every plan, every life they'd destroyed. Old victims returned, standing in the street, weeping, hugging, telling their stories to the world. You could feel the poison leaving the community in real time. 6 months later, Millbrook Heights was a different place. Karen was sentenced to 25 years no parole, Bryce 15 years and mandatory counseling. The HOA was dissolved. Mr. Henderson became the neighborhood's unofficial historian, and Mrs. Chen, now the new HOA president, made sure nobody ever pulled that kind of stunt again. My daughter Zoe's work became a national model, and families moved back, laughter filling the streets where hate used to live. Me, I rebuilt, I healed. And when the next call came, this time from Miami, where another HOA president was trying the same old tricks, I was ready. Justice isn't a one-time thing, it's a marathon, and every win matters. You know what I mean? So I'll ask you, have you ever seen this kind of hate hiding behind community standards? Or have you stood up to an HOA bully? Drop your story in the comments. Sometimes just speaking up is the first step to making sure no one else ever has to go through what we did. And hey, hit like, share, and subscribe. Let's keep the spotlight on until the last rotten board gets dragged out into the sun.